Okay, wow, we have people from all over. This is awesome. Really exciting. Washington, Baltimore, Silver Spring. NYC, hello.
Oh, started as a CSD in December of 2020. Good for you.
Wow.
You're doing it.
Yes. What a year to start.
Yeah, ready for anything now.
Flynn.
Yay. Great, we have a few more people coming in.
We'll start in just a second as soon as we're pretty sure we've got.
God, keep saying hi in the chat. So great to see you all.
Come on in. Welcome. For those who just joined us, if you would like to introduce yourself, tell us where you are from and how long you have been a CSD.
Hi, I'm Melanie Misquestes, and I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I've been a CSC for 1 year this February, actually. So it's been a blessing.
Hi, and I'm so excited. We have folks from all over. It's just really exciting to see that the community schools model is it's just happening everywhere.
Hi, my name's Imani. I'm from Chicago. And I'm super new. I've actually been in my position for only 4 months. I'm the new resource coordinator here, so.
Welcome. Okay, Lisa, I think we probably have, I think we could start.
Yeah, you go right ahead. So I'll say hi, I'm Lisa Hackett. I'm the Deputy Director at the National Center for Community Schools, and thanks for joining us again. I know that these have been some packed days, but hopefully you're getting a lot out of it. And we're excited about this session because the community school director is the core, such a critical person in our community school structure. So we hope that this is going to be a really helpful session where we can share and learn and take a lot away. So I'm going to pass it off to the amazing Tal she'll share more about herself and her experience as a community school director. I know that she's going to bring a wealth of information and be a resource to you all as you all be resources to each other. So yeah, let's set sail.
Okay. Let's get that first slide up. Actually, the third slide. And if you just joined us and didn't get a chance to yet, feel free to put your name, where you're from, and how long you've been a CSD into the chat. So I'll share a little bit about myself. My name is Tal. I was a CSD at PS 67 in Fort Greene in Brooklyn. I started in 2014 when New York City had just newly adopted the community school model as a system-wide program. It had been in practice in New York City for a long time with Children's Aid and a few other organizations, but it had just been adopted as a way. There were a slate of schools, I think about 60 or 70, who had been in danger of being shut down. And instead of shutting them down, they were sort of asked to adopt the community school and renewal model, which was it was considered a turnaround strategy. It was a way to say, hey, maybe these schools are not meeting the benchmarks that we want them to meet because they don't have the resources and the coordination that they need. So let's try this strategy instead. So it was brand new. That strategy was brand new when I started. I'll share that I was hired by one principal. The week I started, a new principal was hired. And so I worked with him for 2 weeks. And then 5 days before the school year started, our parent coordinator came in and he was like, "Hey, guess what? We have a new principal." And I was like, "I know." And he was like, "No, a new principal." So in walked Principal Jackson. She was new, and she didn't know that we were a community school, and she didn't know what a community school director was. So for better or for worse, I got to really shape, alongside her, she was a new principal, what the community strategy looked like for our school, because really no one had any idea. I'm going to talk about the community school competencies, like sort of the skills that we bring to bear as community school directors. I'm going to talk about the leadership styles and the leadership strategies that are really useful. And I hope that will be helpful. And I want to share also that I'm no longer a community school director. I've been working in training of community school directors and in sort of youth development practices. And I've been working with the Children's Aid Society, interviewing folks about sort of what practices they're bringing to bear in pandemic times, including the community school strategy, but other strategies as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how folks are being strategic about their positions in this current pandemic, political, et cetera, moment that we find ourselves in. So let's go to the next slide, Lisa. Let me just get myself. And I want to share sort of, for me, what my community school looked like was full service meant a robust arts and SEL program, attendance programs, a restorative justice program, on-site counseling, health services, coats, dental services, vision, and a whole host of other leadership and social emotional resources that I'll hopefully a little bit later. Let's see. So let's do a quick icebreaker. We're going to break you up into breakout pairs. And we'd love for you to share just with each other how long you've been a CSD, which some of you have already shared, a word to describe your passion for the work, and one moment this year where you felt excited about the potential of growth or opportunity in your program. Lisa, you can do those breakouts. What we're going to do, we were calling it like the Harry Potter port key. We're going to whoosh you out.
Sorry, you all had it all set up and then it's not, right? Okay. Is anyone getting a message to send to a breakout group? Not yet. Okay, apologies. Hopefully we're gonna. Do you see anyone moving off, Tal?
It was at 21 when I came in, and now it's at 17. So perhaps, yeah, they're moving.
So I think some people might be moving. All right, well, so we're gonna get there. For some reason, my automatic one did not really work.
necessary than ever. So I just want to say up front, like, this is hard. This is very hard. And you're awesome. So let's keep going. I want to talk, I want to talk specifically about how, let's go to the next slide, how this work can be done effectively, even in this context. And, the goal is to support the strength and resilience in communities and help them set a really strong vision for the future. And I think that some of these skills are gonna help you do that. So take a look at this. This is the Children's Aid Developmental Triangle. I had something like this on my file cabinet, like next to my desk at work, just so that I was always sort of thinking about where my leverage was and what my focus was. So if you look, if you look in the middle, we have child, family, and community. Those are the spheres of influence. If you ever took any child development at any point, the child is in the context of the family, the community, and surrounding them are the three pillars of the community school, which is core instruction, expanded learning, and comprehensive support services. And you are the connector. The community school director is the person who's really fitting those points together so that they best support the child, family, and the community. Right? You're creating comprehensive support services and expanded opportunities in the service of the core instructional program in the context of a school. But that is also in the service, not just of the instruction, but the whole child experience, like thinking about that child in their full context and bringing their full person and their full value to the school community as a whole, like really making that positive and joyful for them. Anything that sticks out about that to anyone? Any sort of questions or comments? Okay.
I just had not really a question, just kind of a thought. So I've been a community school director for almost maybe like a week. And I think the challenge for me right now is trying to explain to staff kind of like what exactly is my role in the school. Like right now I have a meeting, or at least I will have a meeting with the senior leaders. So the teachers that I work at a high school. So the senior teachers that are, meet weekly. And I love this display. Like, I feel like this is a great visual to kind of like, to show people that may not necessarily know what a community school director is. But like, I always think of like how to kind of come up with like an elevator pitch,
What are you
something
doing?
kind of like very brief to
Okay.
explain.
I can give you work if
So-
you need.
Say it again.
Work if you need.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Let's table the side conversations for now, since we're gonna get.
Okay.
Okay. That might have been just a non-mute.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of like how to like what would be say like this is the shorter version to explain this like visual to like your team essentially.
Hopefully you'll be able to come up with some of that as we go on. I think we'll go through some of the core competencies, and I think thinking of yourself and speaking about yourself as the connector, as a go-to for a lot of the things that that may, people either don't know how to solve or haven't really thought about solving yet. That's one way I think to think about it. I think Lisa, if you go to the next slide, we can pull up those. I think this is a nice, this is a lot of text, but if you think about the relationships, I think the community school director is really like the lead in mobilizing the different, like convening the different teams and thought leaders to attack the various issues and challenges, and also like say what they want and get what we need. So, you're going to partner with the principal in supporting, in New York City, especially in supporting the school improvement plan. That was the sort of the main goal, and co-lead with the principal. So you want that principal to be on board. Yes, they will be available later. And we have a PDF and a handout with some of this stuff too. You know, you want to get a vision for what the community school is going to be that that's appealing to the principal, that helps the principal realize their goals for the school as well. And then you're also, I think the lead for the non-instructional program in the school is a very helpful way to think about it. So they used to call me the assistant principal of feelings. So anything that was like SEL, arts, like, we don't know what to do, this kid is acting funny, who should we go to? We need, you know, like any of that kind of the soft skills, which we know are not really soft, would go to me. And I was kind of like the go-to person in the admin for that kind of thing. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So we're going to do a video. Keep in mind that it was from the before times, and it was made with non-professional actors. This is a real CSD. I know him, but I think it'll give you a good sense of kind of like how a person might walk in, how they might be thinking about this, and some of the hats that they're going to wear as they go in. Okay, Lisa, you ready? Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Can't believe it's been only a month. It feels like years. My first month as a community school director. It's a complex job. So, Jeanette, I was wondering if I could take you up on your offer and maybe shadow you for at least a day. Would Monday work?
Sure, but the soonest I can have you come shadow me would be Wednesday. On Monday, I have a school leadership team meeting and we share confidential information, so that wouldn't work. On Tuesday, I am training our summer camp staff, so let's shoot for Wednesday. Does that work for you?
Wow, that's a lot of responsibilities. Which are most important?
All of them. In general, formal and informal communication with the principal is critical. Governance and planning meetings are essential. As the community school director, you must be at the planning table if your work is going to be coherent in the school. I'm part of the principal's cabinet, school leadership team, school safety committee, and pupil personnel committee.
Okay, so what would be happening when I see you on Wednesday?
Wednesday is not really a regular day, so plan to be here from 9 in the morning to 10 at night or so. We're having one of our signature events, an immigration clinic that will be held from 6 to 10. But the longer day will give you the opportunity to see and learn a lot more. Better try to be here at 8:30.
That's fine. I mean, this is definitely a great opportunity. Also, can you tell me a little bit more about your immigration clinic? There's a huge immigration population here.
We have been doing immigration clinics twice a year for the last 10 years in partnership with the Bar Association of New York. But immigration is just one of the many issues we address. Throughout the year, we support families with everything from high school selection, college preparation, housing rights, and healthcare. It's all about responding to the needs identified during our annual assessment process. There may be similar immigration clinics in your area. If not, I'll give you the contact. On Wednesday morning, you can join me address a group of parents about college readiness, getting the right fit and strategy. We aim to take a proactive rather than reactive approach in hopes of having a greater long-term impact on our families. You can manage the big picture if you're constantly putting out fire. What do you hope to accomplish today?
I just want to experience a regular day and get some context behind what I see. And maybe some advice on how to set my priorities. My first month was a bit, overwhelming.
Jeanette, I have to admit, the first month I felt pulled in 10 different directions. It was not a good feeling. I have solid youth development experience, but this is my first time as a community school director, and the context is extremely different. I guess what I could use some help with is I want some balance. I want to understand what imperatives are important and the others that aren't. Some priorities are clear and others aren't. And it would be really helpful if I could get principal's perspective on quick wins and deal breakers that I should avoid.
So the last one I cannot promise. Principals are also being pulled in different directions. However, if there is opportunity, I can introduce you to her and probably have a quick chat. The question here is about priorities. Your outcomes should be on the top of your mind at all times. That is your North Star. Children's Aid, with our school partner, jointly agreed that we will focus on 4 parts: academics, social emotional, development, health and wellness, and family support. If you stay focused on those 4 sets of results, you won't get far off track. Outcomes are our roadmap. Our work is really navigating the terrain. To be an effective community school leader, you have to be organized and a solid administrator. If all goes as planned, we'll be on the move until 10. Fortunately, this isn't every day. That's why you have to plan well in advance and have a strong team. Managing your resources, including human capital, is very important.
Whether you're talking about staff, partners, volunteers, or champions, people and relationships are some of the greatest assets in the work. Effective community school leaders must be solid administrators. Communication, planning, and being organized are essential. Optimizing use of resources is key as well. At its heart,
Okay, so that we could go on. It's a great video. It's on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing. It's actually it's pretty instructive. Let's keep it. We won't do big breakout groups. You can just kind of let's get that. Oh, we've made another person.
Is it showing okay?
Yes.
The PowerPoint? Okay.
Yep. Yes, great, got it. Kind of in the chat, or if you feel comfortable speaking on video, what was a thing that resonated? Oh, Lisa, can you pull up the next slide?
Yeah.
What was something that resonated for you? Or what are some key responsibilities that sort of stuck out in the film? Are they different from yours, and anything that you would add to the list? And we can do popcorn style. You can feel free to pop it in the chat or say it out loud.
I would say that at first, when you begin your role, you feel that you're being pulled, as mentioned in the video, pulled in so many different directions. And then you're just thinking, okay, where do I start? How do I prioritize? Because everybody's important, but how do I prioritize? Where do I move to first?
Yes. Agree. Yeah. And someone mentioned in the chat also, like, I loved that visual in the beginning of him just wearing all of the different hats and costumes. I really, does the video give tips on where to start?
I thought I changed it. I did that the first time.
If you are not speaking, it would be great if you can go on mute. Yes, the proactive and the reactive approach. We're going to get more into that. Yes, I think the idea of where to start, they mentioned it early in the film, that idea of small wins. I think that I know for myself, while I was trying to figure out what our community school was and how to get people to trust me, I went to the thing that I knew. I was from an arts education background. I had been planning arts residencies in schools. So there were no enrichment activities whatsoever at the school. There was a gym teacher, that was it. And that was just required by law. So we brought in, we were lucky to be in Fort Greene, which is a really culturally rich neighborhood with a lot of arts institutions already. So we brought in the Brooklyn Academy of Music to do African dance. We brought in a cultural arts organization called City Lore to do arts residencies. And that changed the feeling in the school immediately. Kids felt like, oh, this is something different. This is something like arts is something that I've heard other kids in other schools get. And it changed the way I talk about it as like a love language. It was just like kids felt a different sense of care. And so they behaved immediately differently in the school. And so my advice, my sort of like advice is start with what you know and go for a really big and visible win that's easy to accomplish, that people can say like, yeah, that is good. Anything else someone else has done that they would add to the list?
Hi, I have something I would add to the list, and a different starting point actually. Like I would start with the community, with parents. I think that's kind of, getting to know parents and making sure, I try to make sure my work is always grounded and aligned with what parents and community members have identified as their priorities, right? And these aren't always the same as our principals' priorities, right? Like they are accountable for test scores and different things, right? Then we're accountable to our parents. So I think that piece of the collaborative leadership with parents, I think that piece was missing. I mean, I think I spend a significant amount of my time, from the needs assessment process, which is a more formalized process, to just maintaining relationships and connecting with parents, communicating with parents, and hearing and answering their questions.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So to that point, I think the needs assessment, starting from a place of, what are the resources that are here? What are the ways in which people are invested in this place already? What are the strengths that everyone is bringing to the table? I think that's a given to this. And Lisa, if we can go to the next slide. Good. So I want to talk a little bit about the strategic functions. I'll let you just read them, and we'll talk a little bit about what they mean. These are what we have sort of laid out as the key functions of a community school director, the ways in which they're doing their work. So we have leadership capacity, data-driven decision-making, advocacy and policy change, communications, resource development and coordination, and community engagement and coordination. And we can go to the next slide. And these are directly linked to those outcomes of whole child education, health, family, community. I like to think about them as like the leadership capacity is it's what you're doing. It's the, the way that you're interacting with folks, the data-driven decision-making, that's your needs assessment, that's whatever other data points that you do. That's your why, that's, sort of how you're justifying what you're doing and who you're accountable to. And then the how is the second section. This is advocacy and policy change, it's communications, it's resource development and coordination, and community engagement and coordination. And I do want to say also to that point, oftentimes when people think of the community school model, they think only of the resource development and coordination. I think there's a lot of sort of misperception that a community school director is just bringing, and managing all of these different programs. And I think the rest of these skill sets, the ways in which they're operating, the ways in which they're making strategic change, are the actual meat of the community school work, right? You're not just a giver of coats, you're not just a giver of a food pantry, you're not just a budget. You're an essential partner in the school who is accountable to the kids, the families, and the community. I just want to flag that for folks as kind of a perception that they might be working against. Looking at these, this is a lot of text. Is there one that pops out to someone that they want to talk about more? Anything in particular? What sticks out? Feel free to pop in the chat too. And if not, we can, Lisa, why don't we move to next slide? Maybe it's helpful to look at it a little bit more concretely of how this looks. This is in a typical children's aid community school. Meetings, tons of meetings, principal and CSD, that shared leadership, and the skill set that you're working with is your organizing and your action planning, you're co-constructing with the principal and others, you're compromising, you're not going to get everything that you want right away, and there's some give and take. And you in your setting will have your own sort of tools, but Children's Aid has a bunch that you can take from, I think, this result framework and logic model. Your organization will probably have your own CSD report. You'll have your own version of the comprehensive educational plan, which is the goals that are set out by the school, their academic and other metrics that they're targeted to meet over the school year. And then there's the relationships, the families, the PTA, advisory councils. There's, the shared leadership. So, some folks have already left to go to other meetings. You've got your building team, your building response team, your people personnel team. I had an attendance team and a social emotional learning team. Thinking about what teams to deploy strategically to make the change and to get the other folks on board. Building new opportunities. So thinking about what's in the community already and who wants to partner and who wants to be in the school and be engaged and active. And that's across the board. You're going to use MOUs to make sure that you are, that those partnerships are strong, that they're doing what you want them to do, that everyone has what they need to do a great job. And we will get into this later in the presentation, the problem solving, negotiating, meeting challenges, figuring out how to get to where you want to go as a community. Spoiler alert, the answer is committees. But it's a lot of negotiating, organizing, getting people to be their best selves, getting people excited and involved, youth development, education knowledge. You're sort of, I think community school directors come from very interesting backgrounds in youth development, social work often, and so bringing to bear all of their experiences to kind of help folks get where they want to go. Okay, next slide, please. Any questions so far or thoughts? I cannot see everyone, so if you are raising your hand, I can't see you. Great. So I spoke to some folks who have been doing the work this year. Whether I spoke to someone who was fairly new, who had started last year, right before the pandemic hit, someone who had been doing the work for a really long time, and someone who had only been there a year before the pandemic. So I got a sense of kind of what this looked like in practice this year. And I think this brings to mind a lot of the opportunities that are inherent in this challenging moment. And I want you to think, I think when you're thinking about these specific skill sets and the tasks that they entail, where does the school's work already embody the principles that you're looking for as a CSD, and where might there be some opportunities to push. I think in pandemic learning, we are constantly trying new things and trying to be adaptive. So it's a good learning space for people to say, hey, maybe the way we were doing things isn't the best way and we should try something else. So leadership capacity in the past, obviously it meant working with the principal, sharing accountability, sharing responsibility, developing action plans, but also for some people this year, it meant developing an online learning strategy, like figuring out what was going on with Google Classroom, how to train the staff in it, how to get families engaged, whether that was literally like buying tablets and bringing them to people's houses or walking people through the login process. I know that the CBOs were really on the front lines of making sure that people had access to the tools that they needed to stay connected. And that is a type of leadership that is fairly new for most people. It's a place where principals, because it's so new, may be more willing to become thought partners than maybe in other times where things feel a little bit more siloed in terms of what leadership looks like. For data-driven decision-making, again, like looking at the data, seeing who's not logged in, figuring out where they are, figuring out what they need to get in. Non-academically, it means like deploying resources to families, whether it's emergency counseling or emergency medical help, food, technology, and then more broadly making choices about where to deploy extra instructional resources. So I know some folks have developed tutoring and mentoring programs that are virtual between, like a high schooler and an elementary schooler, kind of using the various other resources of the CBO, and figuring out how to connect people to get them together. For advocacy and policy change, in the past, this has been workshops or working with council members. This year, it's about bringing attention to the digital divide and saying like, hey, our kids are in shelters, they don't have Wi-Fi. This is a structural problem. Shifting online learning culture to be more SEL focused and culturally relevant. So a lot of folks have seen situations where none of the kids are turning on their cameras because they're like, they have teachers who are not quite set up for success in like engaging kids on an online setting. And all of a sudden that community building stuff, that SEL stuff, it's a lot more in need, and also meeting the moment of, this summer and Black Lives Matter and culturally responsive teaching. Suddenly a lot of schools were saying, hey, we need to talk about this. We need to do this. This is happening right now. It's been happening for our kids forever, but like, we need to talk about it. And oftentimes the CSD is a person who is connected to the resources or has the capacity to help mobilize around meeting that challenge. And many CSDs are saying that they were offering more direct support to the whole family. So in a time when a lot of people maybe were interfacing more one-on-one with just the kids, at this point, like parents are involved in online learning. Parents are needing help to get their kids logged on. So they're working more directly with the family members. And then we have resource development and coordination, again, like maximum impact of resources in a time where it's really hard to deploy resources. My partner in my group was saying, that can be one of the only times that they actually get face-to-face time with families when they're, standing outside of the school, giving out food or books or whatever it is. It's a chance to really meet people where they're at and say hello and have people get to know you, especially if you're new. That's a great moment to start to build those relationships, have people know that you're the go-to. Anything that sticks out about that or anything additional that is coming up for people? Okay. Next slide, please. So just, I want to talk about the fact that there are opportunities. If you are really lucky, you are stepping into a CSD role that's already people are excited about the program, people want you on board, people trust you. It's usually a little bit more complicated than that. There are lots of opportunities for transformative shifts right now. And I think the capacity to do that relationship building and build trust with people when they're really isolated, when things are looking really hard.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So what are your suggestions for actually making those connections if you are starting during the pandemic? It's virtual, students aren't attending schools. So you get a limited opportunity to demonstrate your capacity because there's so little to do, but so much to do, but you're not given a lot to do because you're just meeting the principal, the staff, and they don't trust you in your capacity right now. So it's in order to make sure that I am an integral part of the building, I am assisting wherever I can. Not that that is the best thing for implementing the community schools program. It's just, I want to be visible. I want to become a part of the team and also be seen as a resource. So what suggestions do you have to like make this a more optimal setting?
I have a few thoughts, but I'll pose it to the group first, to other people who are working in this situation right now. Does anyone have a sort of a concrete thought or idea? Anyone have something that has worked for them?
Well, just to piggyback off that, so I'm in this new situation where I'm trying to build trust within my leadership team. And a call that I recently just had with one of the senior teachers, senior heads of the 12th grade, really emphasized the chronic absenteeism and how I can create more alternative ways of getting students to participate in class because they're on the verge of either dropping out or just not being able to graduate in the spring. And I'm at a crossroads where like I'm not there yet to be able to kind of come up with certain solutions or ideas just yet, because I personally don't feel like I'm there with the team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks are feeling that. I'll say that that's not just a pandemic problem, and that trust is a long game. I think it's certainly harder and feels like it may never happen when you're just doing it all through a screen. I had a colleague named Felicia who used to say, like her school experienced like a love drought. Like it was just people in their silos doing the same thing that they had been doing for a long time, and no one wanted to change and no one wanted to really fix it because no one really believed it could be fixed. And at the end of the day, everyone kind of forgot that there were kids in the building. And this is not an actual strategy, but I think my belief is that you nurture the flames that exist. They're there, and your job is to uncover them and kind of blow a little oxygen into the places where you see potential, and know that it's a long game. We're going to get into the idea of adaptive leadership, which is sort of building your capacity to galvanize people to do like more long-term problem solving. And I think picking any issue that you want to work on and finding a person or two who want to get on board with you, and build that up is the way to go. You know, you start with one thing and it builds trust naturally. I think that's true in pandemic or not. Can we do next slide, Lisa? Okay, so adaptable. I think this is a key strategy for CSD regardless of what times they're living in. You know, I want everyone to think about what you have tried or what you have learned that you continue to make a part of your leadership practice. You know, leadership is the thing that drives the work of the community school. You know, managing multiple partners, removing obstacles to learning, those are always the goals. You are promoting those strategic conversations and figuring out how to connect the dots and how to bring the best out of people. You're a catalyst for change. And even if folks are not seeing that right away or are hesitant to acknowledge you as that, like, you know, as you continue to work, you will become that. You know, as we saw in the video, it's like strategic planning, it's complex relationships, it's dynamics, it's a fast-moving social and political environment, even on the best of days. And so I think adaptive leadership is a helpful framework that help people thrive in challenging times. I think it's used in educational leadership. I think it's used in business too. But it's about being able to individually and collectively take on the process of change in a meaningful way, and like sort of diagnosing the essential. This is kind of how it was sold to me. It's like diagnosing the essential from the expendable and like challenging the status quo, saying like, is it necessary to do this? Why have we done it this way? Can we do it a different way? And getting people on board with the change. So let's go to next slide. Okay, does someone else want to read this? I've been talking a lot. Anyone want to raise their little
I'll do it.
hand? Great, thanks.
Yeah, adaptive leadership. Adaptive leadership is a practical leadership framework that helps individuals and organizations adapt and thrive in challenging environments. It is being able, both individually and collectively, to take on the gradual but meaningful process of change. It is about diagnosing the essential from the expendable and bringing about a real challenge to the status quo.
Thank you. Beautiful. Yeah, so adaptive challenges are the bulk of what we're dealing with right now. And solutions to adaptive challenges shift culture permanently. So as much as we're in a crisis moment, we have some chances to remake like practices that is, I'm sorry to use the word unprecedented. I know we're tired of that word. And I think this is a really key element that distinguishes the community school approach from like just that, as I mentioned before, that resource provision program, right? It's like thinking about like, how are we gonna turn the dial here? So next slide, please. Okay, technical problems versus adaptive solutions. You will probably be solving a lot of technical problems, and sometimes you have to solve technical problems to get to the adaptive challenges. I'll give you an example in a second, but technical problems can just be resolved through the current structures and procedures. It's just like ticking a box or getting a folder. Adaptive challenges are changes that are addressed when people who you work with in your community adjust beliefs, habits, priorities, and loyalties. And that's what we're going for. We're going for that deep system change. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a technical versus adaptive solution that I came upon when I first started. At PS67, our attendance numbers were terrible. I think we were at 81% attendance. But we figured out that we weren't even taking attendance, so that number wasn't even accurate. The reason we weren't taking attendance was because there were no folders. No one was making attendance folders. So we bought folders and we put the attendance sheets inside of the folders, and then we dropped them off to the teachers each day and then collected them. It was a technical problem that involved like not having a system. We solved it by buying folders, and in the principal mandated that everyone take attendance, and they were happy to do it because they wanted that information, and boom, solved. But once we actually were taking our attendance, we still had an attendance problem. We had 89% attendance, which is still not great. So the adaptive problem solving that we did was about changing attendance culture at our school. So I created an attendance team with the principal, the social worker, the parent coordinator, and I was really lucky to have an AmeriCorps attendance, like she was actually a parent at the school who was part of my attendance team. So we created an attendance team. We used the parent to really be like, you know, pounding the hallways, talking to other parents, talking about attendance benefits, talking about how great it was, like what happens when kids attend school every day. And then there were families who, for many reasons, were still not able to send their kids to school. So we were calling to offer services to remove barriers, you know, whether it was like health problems for kids. We ended up providing an asthma program, a case management program for kids with asthma, because that was a really big issue at our school. We created a walk to school buddy system for families who couldn't, for a variety of reasons, walk their kids to school in the morning. And then we were doing, you know, like incentives for 100% attendance and doing celebrations for the kids who had 100% attendance through the year. And this was not my favorite part of this job, but it was something that was really important to sort of helping to build and support the culture of the school. And it was done by sort of changing the way we talked about and did attendance. Any questions about that so far? Okay, so let's go to next slide, please. What is adaptive leadership? How does it go? So there's 3 elements. Preserve what's working. A lot of things are, you know, things are not all broken. Lots of stuff is functioning just fine and doesn't need to be changed, but some things need to go. So, you know, make something new. Easy. The skill set that you're using to do that is one that, because you're doing this job, you probably already have, which is to be observant of how things are going, interpreting that, you know, saying like, asking questions like, why is this happening? Like, why are all of the kids who have asthma showing lower attendance, and what can we do about it? You know, test a couple of hypotheses and see if it fixes it, see if it creates change, and figure out, get other people on board to kind of help you with that. So, you know, change is incremental. This is not a like adaptive leadership solved it, but people are looking for solutions, especially right now. People want to attend meetings where real solutions are actually being discussed and they have real relationships. So that soft skill of building community and building teams that are really committed and dedicated and dynamic is a big part of that. A lot of people, I think, especially in the school building, are so stuck in the day-to-day. There's just like such a, we have to do this, we have to go there, we have to do that, that they're not stopping to even consider what the root causes of the problems are. And, you know, being a CSD, you're naturally an outsider to the building. You're representing a CBO. You're coming from a slightly different perspective. So you know, there are challenges to that, which folks have already mentioned, but, you know, the diagnostic and the creative problem solving is a big asset that you bring to the table. And those, like, you know, like root cause questions are not always a go-to in school culture. So bringing that new lens to a problem solving approach is in itself like a value add. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, here are some tips. Someone else want to read?
Sure, I can read.
Okay, thanks.
Adaptive problem solving tips. Mobilize teams to address challenges, define challenges and root causes with others. Use diagnostic and creative problem solving skills. Work for and highlight progress no matter how small.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a big one. Highlighting progress, making people feel like, hey, we haven't fixed it, but we're on our way, and showing the small gains. You know, we didn't, like, our attendance didn't jump right away to like 95, and it never really did, but making kids feel good about the progress that they made, and rewarding and highlighting their families who were busting their butts to get their kids to school. That helped people feel like, we're in this together. We're going to do it. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to do some adaptive problem group work. In a second, Lisa is going to break you guys up into some smaller groups of 7 or 8 people. And we're going to give you a problem. We're going to use the adaptive leadership framework to think it through. And Lisa, if you can also just put in the chat the instructions and the ABC scenarios, that'd be great. But so as a group, you're going to identify the problem, think through it, and think about what are some solutions that sort of are in line with that adaptive framework. And then think about some specific approaches that you could use to address that challenge. Any questions about that? There we go. Thanks. And so we have 3 different scenarios. Your first task as a group is going to be to choose one of those 3, or if off the top of your head you have one that's great that you're like, I could use a hand thinking through this, and I have it off the top of my head, I think it would be great for us to problem solve, feel free to use that one with the consent of your group. So you're going to choose your problem, you're going to think through it using the adaptive framework, and you're going to choose a group member to share out at the end what you chose and what strategies that you are working for. Thank you, Lisa. So Lisa's gonna, just to make sure that you have all the info, she's gonna type it in the chat so you can go back and take a look so you're not flying free in the breeze.
Yeah, you all can reference that there. Okay, are we ready to try this? I'm probably gonna take a minute to get into groups, but
yeah.
Anything else before we go?
Any questions before we start? Great. We'll have about 10 minutes. And then we'll come back and share out.
Right, bear with me in the transition. I'll share my screen again.
Okay, I think we're mostly back. So hopefully everyone chose a representative from their group to share out. Anyone brave wanna start us out?
I can volunteer to start it off. So our group had about 5 people in it, representing, I think, 3 or 4 different states, New Jersey, New York, Chicago, and California. Illinois, I mean, sorry. So we chose the third scenario of a principal is overwhelmed and doesn't want to meet with the CSG. We found that was kind of like a universal issue for everybody, no matter the state. So some of the things that we just shared out was making everything that you are doing in the school program-wise or initiative-wise available via Google Docs or spreadsheets, so that when the principal has questions, if they're too busy to reach out to you directly, that they already have it available in their shared drive. And also a tip that Pam shared was that if you really need them to see something specific, you can comment on a specific line within a Google Doc so that that specific question gets sent to their inbox and is kind of at the top of their ever-growing inbox. Also, we said to please make relationships with other people in the admin team. So if your school has one or more APs, they might have a little more flexibility in their schedule. And so if you build a relationship with one of them, you're likely to get closer to the principal via that relationship. Joining important committees at your school to get more info and be on the inside scoop, and also just to like be more important as a person in your school, right? Because we are outsiders, we're constantly in and out. So if you're joining these committees, building those relationships, people start to get to know you, and then that trust can be established. Wenda said to make yourself available sometimes for things that are above and beyond what your job description may include. Because if you're helping lightening the load for your principal, they will always notice that. And then to try to just gauge what your principal needs support with without them asking directly, right? Because if you're able to support them in ways that they need, then they're gonna be like, oh, okay, maybe I'll answer their email next time. Because when the principal's happy, you know, we're all happy. So those are some of the creative solutions that we brainstormed as a team.
Thank you. Yes, so good. Yes. Fill in those gaps, figure out what is needed and just do it. Anyone else? Next group.
I can share. So we had a really good discussion in our group, and I guess maybe two things I would share from our discussion. So the first one that we talked about is just being adaptive and trying to make sure that we meet where the principals are. Because I think a lot of principals have different leadership styles, right? And so some people like to have meetings, some people, and then when you even in the context of meetings, some people like to have meetings every Monday at 9 o'clock. And then some people like to have meetings only when they're necessary to have meetings, right? Some people like to have an agenda before the meeting. Some people like to have things come up in the heat, you know, in organically through the context of the meeting. So I think, you know, one of the things that we talked about is just making sure that we understand how principals operate and meet them where they're at, and also kind of related to that, also making sure that we understand kind of what the process is in general in the school and how decisions get made, right? Whether it's the principal himself or herself, or there's a leadership cabinet, or there's a committee of, you know, teacher leaders, or whatever the case is, right? And then kind of the other thing, which, you know, maybe a factor out of our control, is just understanding a little bit about kind of the framework and the auspices of which the community school was started. You know, in some cases, if it's kind of like an island that was started, you know, 4 or 5 years ago with kind of one nonprofit and a community-based organization, and there's a new principal since then, that's very much different as opposed to a community school within a school district, which has district, mayoral, superintendent support, right? And so just understanding those different dynamics and then just making sure that we're being aware and then just orienting our approach that way.
Thank you. Yes, if you do nothing else but just learn the dynamics and power structures of your school this year, like you'll be well set up for next year. Hopefully you'll do more than that, but anyone else? Next person. Any other representatives from your groups? How many groups did we have, Lisa? 4. Okay, so we should have 2 more. Anyone else want to jump in?
I can go for our group, and I do apologize for my camera being off, but which we just so happen to have chosen the second scenario. And just to, I guess, summarize, we talked to a lot of people, brought a lot of different examples. Basically, it all came to the solution that it's situational per student, and we need to take the whole student into consideration, not just say, well, their camera's off. Well, what if they are participating? What if an example of an adult in a training was stated, just like, well, what if an adult, there have been adults that have their camera on, but you know they're not engaged at all, versus somebody who may have their camera off that is engaged in what is happening. So just making sure that you're digging into what may or may not be going on in the home life of the child, and just always looking at the most important part, which is engagement, is the solution, I guess, that we came up with.
And really being strategic and in those individual, again, those opportunities for direct connection. Great. And we should have one more group. Anyone from the last group want to share their problem and some of the solutions they came up with? Brave person. Okay.
I'll share a little bit about our group. As Erica's group, we shared the same scenario, students not turning on their cameras. And in our group, we shared a little bit about how it has happened in our different states, in our different districts, the same problem. But I was commenting on the part about what I, as the community school coordinator, look at is not all the children have a nice space to feel great about sharing what's in their background. Some families might not have had the ability to buy a new desk and fix their little corner for their learning. Some students might simply be just sitting on a couch, on a bed. So they might not feel comfortable about sharing their views. So as long as they're engaging and participating in the chat, unmuting when they are asked the question, we thought that was the best solution, because it's a way of telling, yes, they're engaging, they're there, they're listening. We're not seeing them, but they're responding. So I think that was one of our points. And mostly along the same lines as what just Erica mentioned.
Thank you. Yeah, I think understanding the individual circumstances and doing what you can to make people comfortable to the extent that they are in participating. I think that applies to a lot of the tasks of this work. So I want to close out and thank you everyone for sharing, and thank you everyone for participating and offering your expertise with your colleagues. I hope that you will find ways to continue to do that. I think I have found that community school directors themselves are my greatest resource, and are the only people really who know how this feels and how it looks and how it goes down, despite the difference in context. And obviously every community school is different by design. So I want to leave you with, yes, the slides will be shared out firstly, and also some of the materials in sort of PDF form that you can print or take for your own use. And then also, next slide, Lisa. So as I was doing this, I thought a lot about, I read Emergent Strategy after I stopped being a CSD, but I was like, this describes this work. And I think Adrienne Marie Brown, she's a activist, she's a writer, she's a scholar, she's amazing. If you have a moment to wrap your head around something new, pick up her book, Emergent Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds. I picked 3 of her principles of emergent strategy to leave you with, because I think they're useful and helpful. Move at the speed of trust. You don't have to solve it all. Build trust and the rest will come. Focus on critical connections more than critical mass. Build resilience by building the relationships. These are the things that outlast beyond the school year, beyond the instructional core. It's the relationships that keep people like moving on and through once they leave your school, once they attend to the rest of their lives. And what you pay attention to grows. So if you see a place that needs a little extra love, like, don't ask, put your attention there. And read this book, it's wonderful. And then the National Center for Community School has a bunch of resources, including the Community School Director Playbook, which might be a great next read for you. It just kind of breaks it all down for you. It has a lot of this content and much, much more. So like sending a lot of love to all of you. This is a really challenging moment to be starting this work. I hope you have some hope that this is a great moment to just kind of dig in and get to start getting it done. And it's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome. I am here. My contact info is in the presentation, and it's in the, yes, thank you. It is also in the hub. But I'm here if anyone has any follow-up questions or wants to connect. Let me know. I'm around. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks everyone, and just really encourage you to connect with each other too. I think there was lots of good conversations, and leaving you with some links in the chat. And please make sure to complete your evaluation. Take some time to do the learning guide. We really want your feedback, but we will see you at more sessions later today. Have a great one.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.